Hey everyone, it's Michael Kikle. I hope you're doing well today, and I have a video here to talk about The Iron Giant, a movie that came out in 1999, and I actually got to see in the theaters with my grandparents back in the day. I even had the first Iron Giant couple of toys that came out, and I don't have those anymore, but I do have a VHS tape of the film. And I recently, I think either at a Big Lots or like a Walmart 750 bin, because they don't have a $5 bin anymore, I think I found a Blu-ray somewhere around locally within the last couple of months. And I grabbed it up immediately because I couldn't remember if I had the VHS tape or not, and I wanted to watch the movie again just because. It's one of those callings of nostalgia to want to watch movies that you loved as a kid. This is one of those films that really resonate with me, especially when I was a kid, because I was like Hogarth from this movie. I was a kid growing up on horror films and Goosebumps and stuff like that. Not only cartoons and Power Rangers and, the different things most 90s kids and 2000s kids grew up on. I didn't just grow up on that stuff. My mom let me watch some of the, PG-13 horror films, some of the classic horror films like Friday the 13th and Halloween on TV, and sometimes on VHS, because Halloween didn't really have any blood. There was, one scene of nudity I had to close my eyes on, and whatever. So I could relate to this kid growing up. And The Iron Giant itself, as a movie, was this throwback to the 1950s, which I had never really seen any movies of growing up. But it has a little bit of sci-fi thrown in there. It's kind of a boy and his dog type of story, Basically, there is a giant robot that they call the Iron Giant, basically, in the story, who fell to Earth from space. We assume he's some kind of alien. We find out more about him as the film goes on. I'm going to be very careful about spoilers. In case you've never seen the movie, you absolutely have to. It's been a quarter of a century since it came out. You owe it to yourself to watch this movie because of how good it is, by the way. But basically, this young boy encounters it out in the woods, unknowingly, and becomes friends with it. And again, I think it takes place in the 50s, doesn't it? Or 60s, something like that. It might be the 40s. I don't know, but it's got this, fear of nuclear fallout stuff, with Russia and everybody else. Sputnik has recently been sent out into space. It is phenomenal. It's a Brad Bird movie, by the way. He also brought us The Incredibles. He wrote The Incredibles. He co-wrote this. Brad Bird is a genius, man. But the fact that he brought us this, personally, I like The Iron Giant more than The Incredibles. I love The Incredibles. I saw that in theaters too back in the day. But I think this is his best movie, easily. But it's such a sweet, heartfelt film. You have Jennifer Aniston playing the main character, Hogarth's mom, and she's really good. She's like a waitress at a local diner. She thinks her son watches too many horror and sci-fi movies, and, I love their relationship. I love how, by the way, one of the movies that he watches reminds me of this movie I just saw recently called The Brain That Wouldn't Die, but it's like a reference to that. It's like a brain that was in a big test tube thing that broke, and the brain was laying on the ground in this black and white movie, and it starts crawling away when a guy leaves the room. It was pretty funny. It made me laugh because it just felt in atmosphere like a 1950s film. But overall, this movie, the story of it, this story essence, I guess you could say, the atmosphere, the setting, all of that really fits that throwback that it's trying to do of this 1950s sci-fi movie. I love the Iron Giant. He is absolutely endearing. The kid playing Hogarth is really good. And he even befriends an adult who's new to the neighborhood, who's kind of like the scrapyard guy. He's also a guy who takes that scrap that he collects locally in their town, and he turns it into art, because he's like a pompous artist who's a good guy. His name is Dean. And he's into jazz music and stuff. A lot of this soundtrack has a jazzy feel to it. Have you ever noticed that? I never really noticed that as a kid. But Dean is so cool, man. He's probably my favorite character in the movie. But the Iron Giant himself is voiced by Vin Diesel, and dude, he is phenomenal. A lot of the time they took his dialogue and mixed it in with scrunching metal noises to try to, make it sound like what this thing might talk like, because it can't talk at first. But the backstory of the Iron Giant is such a 1950s concept. I love it. I think it really brings this movie to life even more. And it's the kind of thing that I feel like they would have saved for like a sequel. And I don't think this movie did well when it came out, if I remember correctly. The theater was packed when my grandparents and I went back in the day, and we even went during the daytime, like in the summer, or whenever this movie came out. I remember that. We went to Burger King after that, and I don't remember it doing super well. I just remember leaving the theater really sad, because it's a pretty sad movie. Matter of fact, let me tell you, the other day when I rewatched this on Blu-ray, number one, it's a weird Blu-ray. It's like a signature edition and then the theatrical cut, and I tried both, just kind of flipping back and forth on different scenes, seeing what they look like. Very, to me, inconsequential. They look very much the same. Maybe one cut's longer than the other. I didn't look at that. But just so you know ahead of time, in case you get the Blu-ray. But the thing is, for me, this movie had me crying the other day. And maybe a little bit of it was how much I miss my grandmother. You know, she did pass away quite a few years ago. And that really hits me on certain movies, certain shows that I watched that I saw with her, whether it was when I was a kid or a teenager or anything. Sometimes I see things, they upset me when I think about her. And I think this movie had a little bit of that with me, but also the fact that the movie itself is so sentimental for itself, for something you only experienced for an hour and a half. It was just beautiful in that respect. It is such a sweet, heartfelt, passionately made movie. And if you haven't seen The Iron Giant, you're missing out, man. What a great flick. I love all the comics inspiration, especially from DC Comics and things like The Spirit, you know, before comics even really came around. The Spirit was an old pulp story. This has a lot of sci-fi pulp involved in its veins, you know what I mean? It talks about the spirit. I think they mentioned the shadow. I could be wrong about that. But they definitively mention, like, Superman. I remember that growing up, that the Iron Giant loved, like, the look of Superman in the comics that Hogarth shows him and tries to read to him as a bedtime story in the in the movie. And he wants to be Superman. But maybe he's destined to be something else. We don't really know until you see the movie. But I love it, man. I love the respect and love it has for pulps and comics and everything. It is just such a magnificent movie. And if you haven't seen it, again, The Iron Giant will blow your mind, dude. It is so beautiful. Beautiful really is the word to use for it. One thing I will critique about the movie, that I don't know how much I noticed it back in the day, but I remember having thoughts about how unique this movie looked in art style. What I'm realizing now as an adult, after having not seen it in probably, God, closer to 15 years probably, it's been a long time, they mix hand-drawn animation with CGI animation. That is something that I'm very against the majority of the time. I do not like when movies do that. I don't like it when shows do it. I think it looks like shit. Greatest example ever is one of the best shows ever, Spider-Man the Animated Series from the 90s. Huge fan. When they have Spider-Man swinging in a 3D neighborhood, it's fucking awful. When they have three-dimensional cars driving on those 3D neighborhoods, but you have Spider-Man himself web swinging in 2D, looks like shit. It's awful. This movie has that blended in, but it looks a little bit better than most of the time. But I don't know if it's a Blu-ray thing or what. I don't think it would look like this on VHS. But it looks significantly bizarre when I watched it on my TV with the 3D and the 2D animation being mixed together. So that could be a preferential thing that you may like, you may hate. I don't know. But for me, I didn't think it looked that great when it came to that. Despite the beautiful coloring for the movie, despite the backgrounds and the drawings being so wonderfully done. And I love when, like, they live in the woods and stuff for a little while in the movie, and how beautiful the woods look, how they're drawn. It just adds, again, a ton of atmosphere to the movie. It really knows its characters in the script, and it really does a good job of balancing everything, including this one kind of pulpy, noirish scumbag detective that comes into town who's trying to figure out this mystery of where this asteroid that he thinks is an asteroid, but it's really the Iron Giant, landed nearby. I could have sworn growing up that James Woods plays him. It even sounds like him to me, but I guess he didn't play him. The film has a little bit of kind of adult humor here and there, too, that makes it even more fun. I didn't notice these things when I was growing up, so that made this watch kind of more surprising than I remember it. It was a great flick, man. I know I've kind of rambled on about the movie like I always do, but dude, The Iron Giant, what a great movie, man. If you haven't seen this film, you owe it to yourself to take the time again and watch it just one time in your lifetime. It'll really touch you, I think, deep down in your dark, cold, bitter adult heart. It's great. So anyway, have you seen The Iron Giant? Do you love it? Do you hate it? I'd love to hear everything you have to say about it down below. And thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Catch you later, and goodbye.